So, when you don't know how to do something, how to fix something, or how something works, what do? Ask a teacher? Ask your parents? Ask your friends? Ask someone you really know and trust? No! You go to the internet and ask some randos. But I'm not talking about creeps here, I hope. No, I mean the people of the internet! You know, those people who make how-to videos. Because chances are, if you're trying to figure out something, someone on the internet has already figured it out for you. Things like, how do I unsend a text? No. How do I do a winged eyeliner? How do I get rid of the zit by Friday night? How do I get out of gym class? How do I screen cap Snapchat without getting caught? They'll never know. But then there are things in life that don't have an easy fix, that don't have a simple solution, that don't have a how-to video. Things like what to do when you have problems with family, or when it seems like you have no control in your life, or what to do when someone has done something to you. I mean, clearly, they gotta go. The truth is, there's a lot of life that doesn't have a solution you can just find online. So how do you know what to do when you don't know what to do?
What's up? We're back. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to write in the comments right now, what are some of your all-time favorite movies or stories, okay? Favorite movies or stories. Start blowing up the comments right now. You can just keep throwing them in there. I know one thing that makes a movie great is how much we love the main characters. I mean, isn't that what you love about Marvel movies? I know my daughter is over there probably going crazy because she's going to put every Marvel movie in there. But one thing we love about movies is the main characters. And what producers do is they create characters that we get attached to, doesn't it? And we go deeper into who they are and the good parts and bad parts of their life. And seeing both of them make us like feel connected to them, doesn't it? Make us actually care about what happens to these main characters. Man, these producers and directors, they do a beautiful job at this. But movies show us some of what happens in a character's life when they give us a backstory. And a backstory is a way of letting us in on the things that have happened to a character before what's currently going on. Now, maybe, for example, maybe a movie centers around a dad saving his daughter. But that backstory shows us that their relationship before he saved him wasn't very good and it was strained for some reason. Or maybe, for example, the movie might center around a superhero, because who doesn't love superhero movies? It centers around a superhero defeating his greatest enemy, right? You know, they're doing whatever they're doing. But we discover that before it was their greatest enemy, they were actually best friends. And we learn about that in the backstory. Now, let me see. What are some of the favorite movies? Oh, Nacho Libre and Spider-Man, someone just said. Wow, thank you. I think that's Tyler. Nice job, Tyler. Gianna, any Marvel movie, Gianna says. Yeah, I would agree. Let's see. Crystal, I like music from most movies. It keeps me in the movie. Oh, good job, Crystal. Yeah, I love the music. I love the music the best from... why am I drawing a blank on... I'm drawing a blank on the Marvel movie with all the music. Why am I drawing a blank? No. What am I drawing a blank from?
The one with all the music?
Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm sitting here like I can't think right now about Guardians of the Galaxy. So, but chances are understanding the backstory helps us understand the complexity and how it's more interesting and it's more compelling. And sometimes introducing these things can seem kind of random. Like when a dad is in the middle of a chase to find his daughter's kidnappers, and then suddenly the movie flashes to a scene where his daughters and him are arguing in the kitchen. And you're like, wait, what? What does this have anything to do with what we're watching? And sometimes it'll flash to those scenes and you're like, wait, what? Chances are you felt that living in your own life. Chances are you felt this. There are moments in our real life stories. See what I did right there? Real life stories. There are moments in our real life stories that make us ask these questions. What's happening? Come on, if you've asked that question, just raise your hand. Tell me that you have. There are moments in our real life stories that also make us ask, hey, what's the point of me going through all this? We're going to talk about difficulties, pain, struggle, problems. The things that they're going to be a part of your backstory one day, but you're living in it currently right now. Some things have been a part of my backstory, but man, I did not imagine how things would turn out. I did not like going through it at the time, and the current situation felt horrible to go through, but it's now part of my backstory. And for the past few weeks, we've been talking about what to do when you don't know what to do. And I know we've all had moments like this right now. Today, we're going to talk about what to do when we experience heavy stuff, when we experience the painful stuff. We're going to talk about what to do when we experience the real life stuff. The real life stuff like when your friend dies, or when people make fun of you, or when your learning disability, it makes it more difficult for you to be successful in school, or your learning disability or whatever disability you have, it makes things more difficult for you. Or your self-harm habit seems to get out of control. Or your parents' divorce seems like it's killing you on the inside. Or some of the tough stuff, like when someone you love gets really sick. All of those things I've had in my life. That's why they're written down there. I know what it's like to go through every single one of those, with the exception of parents getting a divorce, but I know what it's like because my dad died when I was 22. So although my parents didn't get a divorce, I know what it's like to have a dad who, starts to fall apart in front of you and he can't be the dad that he used to be. But before we ask the question, what do I do? We often ask ourselves, why? Here's what I want you to do. Write why in the question in the comments right now. Just write the question why. You might be asking, why is this happening to me? Or why am I going through this? Or why is this happening right now? Like, man, why is this happening right now? Why did COVID happen right now? Why is all this social injustice happening right now? And you might be asking this, why is this happening to me? Why is it happening? Why am I going through this? Or why is it happening now? And difficulties often feel random, pointless, or unnecessary. But just like a movie, when it flashes back to a scene, it's actually important. And it doesn't seem to make any difference in the moment, but you understand why later on in the movie, don't you? Sometimes we see the point after the fact, when it's like a part of our backstory. For example, maybe you have a broken friendship, but looking back, you realize that friendship, it led you to some bad decisions, and now you're better off. Because you broke that friendship off, and because they led you to bad decisions, you're like, oh man, I'm better off now. I don't feel bad all the time. And now you know why that happened. Or sometimes we even see the point in the moment while difficulties are happening. Sometimes we do. Maybe you find yourself struggling in the band. All right, I've been here. Maybe you find yourself struggling in the band, and then you realize it was on you. You haven't been practicing. You haven't been putting in the time. And it forced you into putting in the time. And you're like, hey, I got better. So even though, a cheerleader called a meeting and was like, hey, we've got to get better at this. Or you got knocked down a couple chairs in band. Or maybe on the team, you got kicked off the starting line because you haven't been putting in the time. You realize in the moment, hey, I'm actually getting better, and it was for the best. So it's nice when those two things happen, but most of the time, things don't feel good. Things that don't feel good seem pointless. Most of the time, when something difficult happens, pain, struggle, when real life things happen, they can seem pointless. And we've all experienced that hurt. And we feel those pointless moments. Whether it was not making the team or not getting a part in the musical you wanted. I remember that, trying out for a part in a play and not getting the part I wanted, and going through drama with friends and family. We've all asked our question, why me? And in the moment, they're not usually good questions. They're not usually good answers. You usually don't have a great answer to it. And what's worse, in real life, unlike the movies, our difficult circumstances usually don't get a pretty bow tied on them as we walk through them. Usually you're walking through the circumstances and it's not like this pretty bow that you get to wrap it up like a present, be like, oh, look, this was so amazing. It's so good that you went through this. Right? In those times, it can be really difficult for us to see any point behind our pain. In those moments, in real life moments, it can be difficult to find hope despite the hurt. Or find the determination to keep going even when it's difficult. But when we find life confusing or difficult, we can actually learn what we can do by looking to people who have handled similar situations. So if there's any encouragement I can give to you, if you were multitasking, come back to me right now because we're going to go back to the life of Joseph. But when we find life confusing or difficult situations, when we find ourselves in those, we can learn by looking at people who have gone through similar situations. And now we're looking at the life of Joseph. In his account, it's found in the Old Testament in the book of Genesis. So here's a recap. Joseph, born to a wealthy family, all right? Born to a great family. He's like the 11th of 12 boys. His mom died when his youngest brother was born, and so he doesn't have his mom around anymore. But he's the favorite of his dad's family, and because of that, his brothers hate him, and he gets sold into slavery, and then he becomes a slave in Potiphar's house, so an official of Pharaoh. He's working for his house. He's a slave in the house. Then he's put in charge of the house because God was with him. And then he goes from free man, right, to prisoner, or free man to slave, to then he gets falsely accused of some things from Potiphar's wife. We talked about that last week. And then he's thrown into prison. So now he's a prisoner, right? And if anybody had reason to ask, why is all this happening to me? It was Joseph, for real. So here we pick it up in the story. Joseph is in jail for a crime he didn't commit, and he makes some new friends. Good for Joseph. Check it out. This is in Genesis 40:1 through 3. Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master. The king of Egypt, Pharaoh, was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. So Pharaoh is the boss of all of Egypt, right? I mean, he's looked at like a god in Egypt. And if he got mad at you, man, he'd just like throw you in prison. He could just behead you. I mean, he could do whatever he wanted. I mean, he was like the king, God, right? Even if you hadn't done anything illegal. So then the story continues, all right? After these two were thrown in prison with Joseph, after they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night. And each dream had a meaning of its own. When Jesus came to them, Jesus. Oh my gosh, I said Jesus. When Joseph, we all make mistakes. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. Now I had to look up what this word meant. It means sad, depressed, like dispirited. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." Now there's a lot happening here. Remember, Joseph is in prison for a crime he didn't commit. And even though it's a really difficult situation, he continues to honor God. So you should know that right out of the gate here. He's continuing to honor God even though he's in a difficult situation. Then these men tell Joseph their dreams. And with God's help, Joseph interprets the dream and tells him exactly what's going to happen. And based on the dream, the chief cupbearer had, Joseph said he would be restored to a favorable position. But the baker said that like his dream was going to die. And both of those things came true. And you need to look into the rest of the story. We don't have time to sit here and read out all of like Genesis 40 and 41. But you would think that given what Joseph did to interpret the dream of the cupbearer then gets out, and Joseph is like, hey, remember me when you get out and tell, Mr. Pharaoh guy, okay, I want you to know that this guy's locked up and I've been locked up for crimes I didn't commit and he told me the dream and all of that. You would think that the cupbearer would be like, yeah, dude, bro, I got your back. I'll look out for you. He doesn't. No, that's not what happened. Story tells us that the cupbearer who gets out completely forgets about Joseph for 2 years, right? He gets out of jail and he forgets about him. Ouch. Man, bro. Over time, as Joseph was waiting in jail for his friend to remember him, he realized that not only did his friend forget him, but what he did to help his friend didn't help his situation. You might find yourself in that with difficult situations. You look out for somebody, you're helping somebody else, and it doesn't help your situation. I'm sure Joseph was tempted to think, hey, what's the point of all this? Hey, it didn't help my life get better. I can keep trying to honor God, but God's forgotten about me. Or, man, I thought what I did was right. Why am I still in jail? Then 2 years later, Pharaoh has a dream. And, Pharaoh having this dream, it really troubles him because he doesn't know what the meaning was. And nobody in his kingdom can tell the Pharaoh what this dream is about. And he's desperately searching for someone on his staff to interpret the dream. So Pharaoh, after the cupbearer finally is like, oh yeah, 2 years ago, Pharaoh, there was this guy in jail with me. He interpreted my dream. You should probably talk to him. Pharaoh's like, all right, I'll give Joseph a shot. So he gets him out of jail. Joseph tells him the dream, exactly what's going to happen. And Pharaoh puts him in second in command of all of Egypt. And under Joseph's leadership, Egypt then survives a terrible famine, which eventually put Egypt in a position to save Joseph's family and other people in his homeland. It was 2 full years before the cupbearer even remembered Joseph. And even when Joseph was promoted to a position of incredible power, here's what I want you to remember. He was still living in a foreign land. He was still not like his own, he didn't still have control over his own life because Pharaoh still had control over him. So it wasn't like Joseph could just go home free back to his family. So this didn't mean Joseph's life was perfect. But when we see the big picture, we understand the context to Joseph's backstory. Everybody write in the comments, backstory right now. We see that Joseph's challenging circumstances uniquely positioned him to do something great. Okay, Joseph learned how to run a household when he was in the household of Potiphar. Even though he was a slave, he was uniquely positioned to learn how to run a household. Then, when he was put in jail, God was with him and he learned how to run an institution. What we didn't read is that he was actually put in charge of the jail, of the prison. So he learned how to run an institution, but he had to wait 2 years. All the good things that happened in Joseph's world didn't make up for those bad things, did it? It didn't make it all okay. Being promoted to second in command didn't undo the challenges he faced. But at the same time, those difficult circumstances positioned Joseph. Hear me in this. Listen, if you're multitasking, if you put down your phone and you're come back to me right now. Those difficult circumstances positioned him and prepared him for something great, something only he could do. And it was run a country. So he learned how to run a household, an institution, and then run a country. But it was because of the difficult circumstances. and the hard times that prepared him. And the same is true for you and me. Hear me. Hard things can happen, and hard things will happen in your life. The Bible says it all throughout the New Testament. Jesus says it, that hardship will come, that you will face trials of many kind. This is something I remind myself often. I remind myself this: remember that just because something happens doesn't mean it was something God did to you or wanted for you. I'm going to repeat that. Remember, just because something happened doesn't mean it was something God did to you or that he wanted for you. Because of sin, life can be unfair. Life doesn't always make sense. Because of sin, people hurt each other, and they create systems of hurt. I'll bet you've been hearing about this, the systems or the systematic whatever. But you know what this is? It's a system of hurt. It's a system of sin. You and I live in a system of sin. We hurt other people because we are hurt. That's the system. But when it seems like it's impossible that any good can come out of a situation, remember, God is really good at doing the impossible. It says in Romans 8:28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, and we have been called according to his purpose. It may not seem like things are all going to get better, and it may not even make sense yet, but God is in the business of taking our hurt, difficulties, and pain and redeeming them. God is in the business of taking our hurt, our difficulties, our pain, and redeeming them. That means even if something was done in evil, or if it was done and it was evil for our lives, he can use it for good. And he can use it for good to help others. So in other words, when you don't know what to do, remember that your problems can position you for a purpose. That's so good. Like, seriously, everyone just write purpose right now in the comments. Like, for real. Because when you don't know what to do, remember that your problems can position you for a purpose. Here's what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean you can tie a bow on everything that has happened and it's all going to look nice and pretty. It doesn't mean that everything will be fixed and go back to how it was before. And before everything happened, it's all going to be great and perfect. That's not what it means. I can tell you that's not what it meant for me in my life when our pastor of the church, when we started Journey Life Church, left and some things happened. And, at times I was hurt. I was hurt by people around me. And I can tell you that going through it, it didn't, it wasn't like there was this bright, shiny bow that's put on it. But now I am repositioned, and I feel like Amanda and I have felt like God has called us to a repositioning, and we're going to reposition things at ReaLife. And what God is calling you, what God might be calling you to, is repositioning something, even though it doesn't mean all of it's going to be fixed and everything went back to the way it was. A lot of our friends that we started the church with 14 years ago, they're all gone. Like, they're not even around here anymore. Not even in Michigan, some of them. So it doesn't mean it's all going to be fixed. But here's what it does mean. We can leave room for God to tell a new story in our hard circumstances. It does mean we can have confidence in God's ability to redeem things. It does mean that the bad stuff doesn't get the last word. The bad stuff doesn't get the last word. The hardest and worst things we experience aren't the end of our story. So the hardest and worst things that you've experienced aren't the end of your story. They could be a part of something more. When we go through pain, we can't see the purpose yet. Trust me, when I was going through all of everything that happened when my dad died, I didn't see the purpose in it yet. And sometimes I still don't see the purpose in it. Sometimes I look at my own kids and I'm like, my kids would have loved their papa, but I don't get that chance. Sometimes we still don't see the purpose in it for years down the road. But When we go through pain and we can't see the purpose yet, here's 2 things that you can do to get a bigger perspective, okay? Number 1, remember, no one else has your life story. Your difficult circumstances, they're not fun, but here's what they are. They're unique to you, right? Nobody else has your life story, good or bad. You could be going through some really joyous times. That's something you share with people. You need to share your triumphs and your wins because nobody else has your unique story. It's unique to you. So lean into the good times. When you got good times, like for real, lean into those. You know, when you go to Disney and lean into that because, you know, that's a good time. When you're creating memories with your family, lean into those good times. They're unique to you. Your story, it's going to put you in a position to grow, to discover things that no one else can discover. God is using your story in ways that you can't even imagine because they've shaped you uniquely. It may not make it easier, but it's going to give you a perspective to see things way differently. So the second thing, when we go through pain and we can't see the purpose yet, we remember no one else has your life story, but second, we remember that your story can intersect with others. Your story is uniquely intersecting with other people. Go back to Joseph. Here's something I want you to remember. When Joseph, I feel like God's giving me this right now. When Joseph was in prison with the cupbearer and the baker, what's one of the things he did? He noticed the baker and the cupbearer that they were dejected, that they were sad, depressed. First thing we have to remember, Joseph could have sat back and been like, boy, they don't seem like they're feeling too good. Or, they seem like, you know, their spirits aren't very up. Or, gosh, they seem a little depressed. I'll pray for them. He could have been like, you know, I'm going to pray that God helps them. No. Joseph was in a unique position and his life intersected with them. And what did he do? He acted. So here, get ready to write some words down. Okay? Get ready. You're going to write some words in the comments right now. Because no one else has your life story. Many people face similar circumstances to you, and you could be a voice to help them through their own challenges. All right? So, here's the words you're going to write in the comment. I want you to remember, when you go through family drama, you can help, right? You can help right now in the comments. Because you can help people who are going through family drama. If you've been through that, you understand that, right? When you go through a hard breakup, you know, it can be rough out there. I know, in that old dating game. But when you go through a hard breakup, you can understand. So, right, you can understand in the comments because you can understand how someone else feels when they're going through that. When you deal with sickness or illness or injury, you can encourage. Everybody write, you can encourage in the comments right now. You can encourage people who are going through the same thing, that are dealing with sickness or illness or injury. And the last one I want you to write, when you have big doubts and questions in your faith. I don't care if you were raised in church. I was born in a pew, okay? I was like born in church and raised and all of that, right? But when you have questions about your faith, you can be a safe place when others also have questions. So write, you can be a safe place right now in the comments. Right, you can be a safe place. You can be a person who looks to understand what other people are going through because of your story. And you can say like, oh, man, you're going through that? I feel that too. Or you've experienced that? Bro, I have experienced that too. I've been there. And by the way, that's what ReaLife is about. That's what we're about. So if you want to know, like, what's the purpose? Why are we coming to youth group? Why do I spend my Wednesday nights? Dude, this is what it's about. That when someone else feels something, you can be there for them. It ain't just about us all coming to a room and like having a good time, which is great, but it's got to be more than that. It has to be deeper than that. This is what the church is meant to do. When others need encouragement, you can encourage them. The truth is, the next best thing to having something fixed for us is having someone. The next best thing to having something fixed for us is having someone who's been there, someone who's been through that, right? And they can walk alongside us. That's one of the reasons why we make sure we have small group leaders and coaches here. That's one of the reasons why we do small groups, because when you get in a group of people, it's not just about fixing the situation. It's about you and I knowing we've got people that are walking alongside us. And if you're going through something, one of the best things you can do is talk to your small group coach or talk to somebody in your life group. Even if you've never experienced that exact situation, that small group coach, they're going to have a better perspective. That leader or maybe another person in your group, they could have a different perspective than you. Joseph went through pain that felt pointless at so many different times. But we see when we look at his backstory, remember we talked about the backstory at the beginning, we see that God used his problems to position him for a purpose. God took his impossibly bad situation and used it to create unimaginable good down the road. And we'll talk more about that next week. What if God is using your situation that you're in right now to position you for something that's amazing that you haven't even seen yet? I can tell you, as I've been exploring more about myself during this quarantine time and while we've had all this time off, right? I've been exploring some reasons why I went through some of the struggles I did with my dad, and I started looking for mentors and people to be coaches in my life. And I realized that's something that I want to do. I want to coach and train people more about this. I don't want to just people to show up. I want to coach people. I want to mentor people on a personal level. So what if the first step is simply asking for help? Here's your next step, and then here's what we're going to do. I'm going to share with you your next step that you can post in our ReaLife Family Facebook group. But after that, we're going to play a worship song, and hopefully Facebook doesn't cut down our live feed for this, you know, how they can be. So hopefully Instagram and Facebook, it doesn't get shut down when we play this worship video. But I'm going to share this next step, and then we're going to enter into a time of worship of a newer song. So whatever you're doing, I want you to come back right now and engage in this worship song. So whether that's standing to your feet wherever you're at, whether it's going for a walk, if you're like, hey, this might be kind of weird with my family around or wherever I'm at. Maybe for you, it's just getting in a different spot of the house so that you can be quiet before God. But we're going to worship to this song after I give you the next step, because it goes perfectly with what we're talking about today. But here's your next step. I want you to go to the ReaLife Family group and ask to join, or you can tag us on Instagram, ReaLife Holt. And I want you to share with us what you're looking forward to the most for next week, ReaLife in-person gathering. Share with us, whether that's written, you can write it out as a post, or you can, shoot a quick video and you can post it in the group, or you can put it on Instagram and tag us. I want you to share with us what you're looking forward to the most about next week's. Now, I want you to go deep. Don't just get on there and be like, I'm looking forward to seeing my friends. Boom. We all know that, okay? For real. Give us a little bit more about why you want to see your friends or what that's going to do for you, okay? So don't just give me the easy answer, okay? Go a little bit deeper than this. I want you to think about, what are you looking forward to? Because what we expect is what we're going to get. So I want you to know what you're expecting next week to be, all right? And then you're going to do that for your next step. And so now we're going to transition into this worship song. And I want you to enter in during this song. As long as we don't get shut down, we'll go back. We'll do the game after this. All right. Otherwise, we'll post the Zoom meeting and we'll jump into the Zoom and play the game there. But I want you to enter into worship. I want you to really take some time during this song to focus in right now, because God took Joseph's impossible bad situation and used it to create an unimaginable good down the road. And I want you to remember this. When you don't know what to do, remember that your problems can uniquely position you for your purpose. Let's go into this time of worship right now.